Welcome to English via AI. Imagine a young man on horseback in the freezing cold. Behind him marches a tired and hungry army. They move through the dark and snowy night. Many of the soldiers have no shoes. Their feet leave marks of blood in the snow. Yet they keep following one quiet man. He does not promise them warmth or comfort. He promises them only a chance at freedom. Years later, this same man will hold enormous power. He could take a crown and rule like a king. But he will make a choice that surprises the whole world. This is the story of George Washington. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732. He was born in the colony of Virginia. At that time, America was not a free country. America was a group of 13 colonies. These colonies were ruled by Britain from across the ocean. The people there were still British subjects. His family were landowners and farmers. They were respected, but they were not very rich. George was one of several children. His father died when George was only 11. This early loss changed the young boy's life. He would have to grow up quickly. George did not get a long or formal education. He never studied in Europe like some rich young men. Instead, he learned useful and practical skills. He learned about land, farming, and manners. These simple lessons shaped his serious character. They prepared him for the hard road ahead. As a teenager, George needed to earn money. He found work that suited him very well. He trained as a land surveyor. A surveyor measures and maps areas of land. This was valuable work in early America. The country was wild and mostly unmapped. George traveled into the rough frontier for this job. He crossed rivers, forests, and steep mountains. He often slept outdoors in hard conditions. This work made him strong and independent. It also helped him earn good money. Soon, he began to buy his own land. George believed that land meant wealth and respect. This belief stayed with him for his whole life. The quiet boy was becoming a confident man. George's older half-brother was named Lawrence. Lawrence was like a second father to him. He owned an estate called Mount Vernon. Sadly, Lawrence became sick with a lung disease. George even traveled with him to a warm island. They hoped the sea air would help him heal. On that trip, George caught a deadly disease called smallpox. He survived, but it left light scars on his face. The illness also protected him from smallpox later. Lawrence, however, did not recover from his sickness. He died, and George felt the loss deeply. In time, Mount Vernon would become George's own home. This painful loss pushed George toward a new path. He began to dream of a life in the military. War was waiting for him in the wild frontier. In his early 20s, George became a military officer. He served in the forces of Virginia. He was given command at a very young age. He fought in the French and Indian War. This war was a struggle between Britain and France. Both sides wanted control of North America. The war lasted from 1754 to 1763. George was sent on dangerous frontier missions. He saw real battle for the very first time. His early years brought hard defeats and mistakes. Once, he was surrounded and forced to surrender. It was a painful lesson for the young officer. He also survived a terrible ambush in the forest. His British general was killed in the attack. George stayed brave and helped the survivors escape. People began to notice his courage under fire. He was calm and steady in great danger. A future leader was slowly taking shape. After the war, George returned to civilian life. In 1759, he married a widow named Martha. Her full name was Martha Dandridge Custis. Martha was kind, practical, and quite wealthy. The marriage brought George a larger estate. It also gave him a family to care for. George became the master of Mount Vernon. This was his home and large plantation in Virginia. He worked hard to manage its land and crops. He was curious about better farming methods. He tried new crops, tools, and ideas. He wanted his estate to grow and improve. George also began a life in public service. He joined the local government of Virginia. There he learned how politics really worked. There is a hard and important truth in this story. Like many rich landowners of his time, Washington enslaved people. This is a serious and painful fact. Enslaved men, women, and children worked at Mount Vernon. They received no pay and had no freedom. Their families could be broken apart at any time. This cruel system cannot be excused. Real human beings suffered greatly under it. The comfort of Mount Vernon was built on their forced labor. A complete and honest history must include this truth. We will return to this subject near the end. It is a permanent shadow over his life. Washington became a great leader of freedom. Yet, he denied freedom to many people around him. Both of these truths are real. Over time, the colonies grew angry with Britain. Britain had spent a lot of money on war. Now it wanted the colonies to help pay. So Britain placed new taxes on the colonies. There were taxes on paper, glass, and tea. Many colonists felt these taxes were deeply unfair. The colonists had no voice in the British government. They could not vote for the leaders who taxed them. A powerful idea began to spread among them. The idea was no taxation without representation. It meant they should not be taxed without a say. This simple idea would soon change history. Protests grew larger across the colonies. In one famous act, colonists threw British tea into the sea. Trust between the two sides was breaking apart. In 1775, fighting finally broke out. Colonial soldiers clashed with British troops. The American Revolution had truly begun. The colonies now needed a leader for their army. They wanted someone calm, respected, and strong. They chose George Washington. He became commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. It was a huge and heavy responsibility. His army was small, poor, and untrained. The British Army was one of the best in the world. It also had the strongest navy on earth. Many people doubted the colonies could ever win, but Washington understood one key idea. He did not always need to win big battles. He mainly needed to keep his army alive. If the army survived, the dream of freedom survived. So patience became one of his greatest weapons. He would need every bit of it. While the fighting raged, leaders made a historic choice. On July 4, 1776, they approved a famous document. It was called the Declaration of Independence. The document announced that the colonies were now free. It was mostly written by Thomas Jefferson. It said that all men are created equal. These were powerful and hopeful words, but they held a painful contradiction. Many who signed it, including Washington, enslaved people. The freedom they declared did not include everyone. This contradiction would trouble the nation for years. Still, the Declaration became a symbol of hope. The war now had a clear and noble goal. The early years of the war were brutal. Washington faced defeat after defeat. He even lost the important city of New York. His army was pushed back again and again. Supplies were low and money was scarce. Many soldiers grew tired and went home. Through all of this, Washington refused to quit. He retreated when he had to. He avoided total destruction of his army. He kept his men together by sheer willpower. He knew that surrender would kill the dream. So, he waited for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came at the end of 1776. The army was cold, tired, and losing hope. Washington decided to take a bold risk. He planned a surprise attack on the enemy. On the night of December 25, 1776, he acted. He led his men across the icy Delaware River. Sharp pieces of ice floated in the dark water. Early the next morning, he attacked Trenton. The enemy did not expect a fight in such weather. Washington won a quick and important victory. A few days later, he won again at Princeton. These wins were small in size, but huge in meaning. They gave the army new hope and pride. Soldiers who wanted to leave now decided to stay. New volunteers joined the fight for freedom. Washington had shown the war could still be won. The war was long, and the suffering continued. One of the hardest moments came at Valley Forge. The army camped there during the winter of 1777 to 1778. The conditions at the camp were terrible. Soldiers suffered from cold, hunger, and disease. Many did not have proper shoes or clothing. Some men walked on bare and bleeding feet. Sickness spread quickly through the crowded camp. Many soldiers died during that bitter winter. But Washington stayed with his suffering men. He shared their hardship and their pain. He fought hard to get them food and supplies. A skilled European officer helped train the army. His name was Baron von Steuben. He taught the men to march and fight as one. Slowly, the army grew stronger and more skilled. Valley Forge became a symbol of endurance. It showed that suffering could lead to strength. Washington could not win the war alone. The colonies needed help from other nations. France was Britain's old and powerful enemy. At first, France gave secret support. Then the Americans won a great battle at Saratoga. This victory happened in 1777. The wind at Saratoga changed everything. It convinced France that the Americans could succeed. In 1778, France openly joined the war. France sent money, soldiers, and warships. Skilled foreign officers came to help as well. One famous young Frenchman was named Lafayette. Lafayette became almost like a son to Washington. Foreign help gave the Americans new strength. The war was no longer a small rebellion. After many years, the war reached its final stage. A large British army gathered at Yorktown, Virginia. Their commander was General Cornwallis. Washington saw a golden opportunity. He marched his army south with French help. At the same time, a French fleet arrived by sea. The French ships blocked the escape by water. American and French forces surrounded the town by land. General Cornwallis was completely trapped. In 1781, the British army at Yorktown surrendered. It was a decisive and historic victory. Britain's will to fight was finally broken. A weak group of colonies had beaten a mighty empire. Washington had led them to this amazing moment. The impossible dream was becoming real. The fighting had ended, but peace was not final. Leaders still had to agree on paper. They met in Europe to write a treaty. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris ended the war. Britain recognized the independence of the United States. A brand new nation was truly born. Washington was now a great national hero. The whole army trusted and admired him. At this moment, he held enormous power. Some angry soldiers hinted at a bold idea. They suggested Washington should seize control by force. It was a very dangerous moment for the young nation. Washington could have taken power for himself, but he firmly refused to do so. What he did next would define his character. After the war, Washington was the most powerful man in America. Many generals in history would have seized this chance. He could have ruled like a king. Instead, he did something rare and remarkable. In 1783, he resigned his military command. He gave his power back to the government. He stood before the leaders and returned his command. Then, he simply went home to Mount Vernon. The world was amazed by this choice. Even his old enemies were deeply impressed. A victorious general had willingly stepped down. He chose a free republic over personal power. Washington showed that true strength includes letting go. He believed the nation should be ruled by law. He would not place himself above his country. The young nation soon faced a serious problem. Its first government was very weak. The states argued, and no one could keep order. Leaders knew that something had to change. In 1787, they met in the city of Philadelphia. They gathered to create a new plan. Washington was chosen to lead this important meeting. His presence gave it trust and respect. The debates were long and often difficult. Out of this meeting came the United States Constitution. A constitution is a set of basic laws. It created a stronger national government. The Constitution also created the office of president. Now, the country needed its very first leader. Once again, the people turned to Washington. In 1789, Washington became the first president. He did not take the job for personal glory. He accepted it out of a sense of duty. As the first president, every action set an example. There were no leaders before him to copy. He had to create traditions from nothing. He chose to be called simply Mr. President. He rejected grand and royal titles. He wanted to lead with balance and calm. He chose capable people to help him govern. These advisors formed what we call the cabinet. Two of them often argued with each other. Washington worked hard to hold the government together. He was building something meant to last. Its foundation had to be strong and steady. Being the first president was not easy. The young nation was fragile and poor. It carried many debts from the long war. Washington supported plans to build a strong economy. He wanted the nation to pay its debts. He wanted it to earn the world's trust. He also had to keep peace at home. When some citizens rebelled against attacks, he acted firmly. This event was called the Whiskey Rebellion. In foreign matters, he chose caution. Wars were spreading across Europe at the time. Washington kept the young nation out of them. He believed the country needed time to grow. His careful choices helped it find its feet. He guided it through its most fragile years. Washington served as president for 2 terms. Each term lasted for 4 years. After that, he made another powerful choice. He decided not to seek a 3rd term. He chose to step down from power once more. He could have stayed in office for life. But he did not want to hold power forever. More than anything, he wanted to set an example. His choice created a lasting tradition. Before leaving, he shared a famous farewell message. He warned against deep political division. He also warned against harmful foreign conflicts. His decision to step down became a proud tradition. It showed that no leader was above the nation. Power could pass on in peace. After leaving office, Washington went home once more. He wanted a quiet life as a farmer. He hoped to rest after years of service. He enjoyed his land, his home, and his family. But sadly, his time was short. In December 1799, he became seriously ill. He had been outside in cold, wet weather. He developed a severe throat infection. His condition grew worse very quickly. The medicine of that time could not help him. George Washington died on December 14, 1799. He faced his death with calm and courage. The entire nation mourned his loss deeply. He was remembered as the father of his country. His name would live on for centuries. To be honest, we must return to a hard truth. For most of his life, Washington enslaved people. They lived and worked at Mount Vernon. They had no freedom and received no pay. Their families could be separated at any time. Real people suffered greatly under this system. Over the years, his private views seemed to change. He grew more uneasy about slavery inside. Yet, he still benefited from it for decades. In his will, he made a rare choice. He arranged for the people he enslaved to be freed. They were to be freed after Martha's death. But this small step came at the very end. It could not undo the years of suffering. So his story mixes real progress with lasting harm. George Washington left a powerful legacy. He led a weak nation to independence. He guided a poor army through terrible hardship. He gave up power not once, but twice. He helped shape the office of president. He set traditions that still guide the nation today. His face now appears on money and monuments. The nation's capital city carries his name. He remains a central founding figure. But his legacy is not simple or perfect. He fought for liberty while enslaving people. This deep contradiction is part of his true story. Today, people study him with respect and honesty. They admire his courage and his humility. They also face the painful truth of his faults. The story of Washington gives us several lessons. The first lesson is patience. He survived hard winters and many defeats. He kept going, one difficult step at a time. The second lesson is discipline. His discipline held the army together in dark days. The third lesson is humility with power. Washington gave up power more than once. He chose duty and service over personal glory. The fourth lesson is honest reflection. Even respected people can carry serious faults. A true view of history holds both light and shadow. The simple takeaway is this: real leadership is not only about winning. It is about patience, humility, service, and honest truth. Vocabulary, meanings and examples from the story. Colony, a land controlled by another country. Example, America was a group of 13 colonies. Surveyor, a person who measures and maps land. Example, he trained as a land surveyor. Frontier, the wild land at the edge of settled areas. Example, George traveled into the rough frontier for this job. Officer, a person who leads soldiers in the military. Example, in his early 20s, George became a military officer. Plantation, a large farm often worked by forced labor in history. Example, this was his home and large plantation in Virginia. Rebellion, a fight against a ruler or government. Example, this event was called the Whiskey Rebellion. Revolution, a big change, often when people fight their government. Example, the American Revolution had truly begun. Surrender, to stop fighting and give up. Example, in 1781, the British Army at Yorktown surrendered. Independence, freedom from the control of another country. Example, Britain recognized the independence of the United States. Constitution, a set of basic laws for a country. Example, a constitution is a set of basic laws. Humility, a calm and modest view of yourself. Example, they admire his courage and his humility. Legacy, something important that remains from a person's life. Example, George Washington left a powerful legacy. Grammar tip, modal verbs could and would. Explanation, we use could to talk about past ability or possibility. We use would to talk about a result or a choice. Both are useful when we describe difficult decisions. Example 1. He could take a crown and rule like a king. Example 2. Washington could have taken power for himself. Example 3. Many generals in history would have seized this chance. A simple way to remember: use could for what was possible and would for what someone chose. George Washington was not a perfect man. He lived in a time of deep contradiction. He fought for freedom, yet he enslaved people. He gave up power when others would have kept it. He served his country with patience and quiet strength. His story is honest, complicated, and deeply human. So here is a question for you to think about. When you gain power or influence, how will you use it If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and comment below with one lesson you will carry with you. Subscribe to English via AI for more real stories that help you learn English, one journey at a time. Keep learning, keep building.